know your name, I swear I do. It's on the tip of my tongue. Sorry, what did you say? I've known you for how long? Your face is so familiar, but no name comes to mind. Please, can you remind me if you'll be so kind? Staring out into space, asking God to hear my case. Trying to think of all things past. How long will my memory last?
Well, hi, everyone, and welcome to Alzheimer Speaks Radio. I'm your host and founder of Alzheimer Speaks, Lori LeBay, and basically created Alzheimer Speaks because my mom lived with dementia for 30 years, and the experience was life-changing, and I really felt a need to connect people to resources, tools, and products, and just to one another so that they didn't feel so isolated. So it's my privilege to be with you today, and we're going to have an exciting conversation. I think that will give you great hope about dementia clinical trials. We're talking with Dr. Sharon Cohen, who has been in the field for an extensive period of time, and I will pull her in just a minute, but we're always getting new listeners, so I like to tell people a little bit about Alzheimer Speaks, who we are and what we do. Bottom line, we're an advocacy-based company providing multiple platforms to shift our dementia care culture from crisis to comfort around the world. And we do that through the radio show, through our blog, through our YouTube channel, speaking, training, consulting, all kinds of different avenues, and really trying to collaborate and bring things from around the world to the United States and share what we have with other countries as well. We also help companies expand their brand footprint by leveraging our platforms and connecting them to the people who so need their resources. And I also want to thank each and every one of you as our listeners. You guys have been so loyal and so gracious, and through your commitment to jumping on the bandwagon of raising dementia awareness, you have gotten us accolades from Oprah, from Maria Shriver, from Dr. Oz, and this month it'll be AARP Minnesota as inspiring leader and a disruptor in the industry, which is really exciting and an honor. But again, all of those accolades we share with you because we do nothing alone. We really are a team. So I hope that you'll continue to like and click and share on Facebook, on Twitter, Instagram, whatever your social modes are, or if it's just in conversation and you're not connected through technology, that's okay too. But we need to have these conversations, and we need to spread where people can find the information that they so need. If you'd like to join the conversation today, please call in to 323-870-4602. That's 323-870-4602. I also want to give a shout out to a few companies that I just adore. One is called the Roberto app. It was created by athletes that wanted to make a difference, and it measures brain function. And it's a great way to have fun, just playing some video games and monitoring your brain health. And even if you're not worried about a cognitive impairment, I think you'll be shocked at your results and how your brain changes depending on what you're eating, how much you've slept, how much stress you're under. And so it's a good reminder to all of us to live more consciously. And you can find the Roberto app if you just go to alzheimerspeaks.com. There's a big banner on the right-hand side that'll take you to a free extended trial before you decide to subscribe or not. And then, of course, I always love giving a shout-out to Maria Shriver for her women's Alzheimer's movement and her Move for Mind. She's just so passionate about raising awareness. You've probably seen her on TV because this month is all about dementia. And so that's pretty exciting. And she's just a wonderful person. And if you want to be inspired, read her Sunday paper as well. And then the last I want to shout out to, of course, are Tammy and Kathy with Dementia Raw. They have a company called Silver Dawn Training Institute that equips both professionals and loved ones that are caring and committed to caring for someone with dementia. And they're just rolling out a brand new online program for caregivers. So you can go and check them out at cdcsdementiaraw.com, cdcsdementiaraw.com. Well, let me introduce our guest today. Dr. Sharon Cohen has been a dementia trial investigator since 1996, and she is a behavioral neurologist, a speech and language pathologist, an assistant professor at the University of Toronto, and the director of the Toronto Memory Program, which is Canada's largest center for Alzheimer's clinical trials. She is committed to improving therapeutics in dementia through participation in international treatment trials. And it's so exciting to have her with us here today. If there's a clinical trial for Alzheimer's, there's a really good chance that Dr. Cohen and her team are part of it. So welcome to the show today, Dr. Cohen. I'm so excited to have this conversation with you.
Thank you so much, Lori. I'm excited and one of your newest fans. I just love what you're doing, and I'm really honored to be on the show.
Well, it's fun. I think it's just important to get this information out to people. And, one of the questions that I ask everybody who is a guest on the show is, have they been personally touched by dementia? And some have and some haven't. It doesn't make any difference, but it just gives people a little bit more insight as to you. So would you mind sharing if you or a family member has been touched by dementia, or maybe a friend, sometimes friend of a family?
Yeah,
you
thank
just
you
never
for
know.
asking. Very few of us don't know somebody or, have someone in their family, without Alzheimer's. But as you know, I'm an Alzheimer's doctor and have been for a few decades. But it turns out that my late father had Alzheimer's disease, and my mother I'm now caring for, both of my grandmothers. So I've seen this disease up close. It's been an honor to look after my family, although it's been heartbreaking as well. And my patients whom I see every day, and try to keep quality of life and spirits high. And it's the full circle view that I've been fortunate to have been touched by. Not that I wish this disease on anyone, but I think as a physician, it's good to see the inside story as well.
I agree. It puts a whole different perspective on it. And I would imagine, and I'll ask you this question, since you have kind of a chain in your family, have you or are you considering seeing if you have the genes?
I have. Yes, I think that, I and my two siblings, I have a sister and brother, are at higher risk than average for Alzheimer's disease, and I'm the kind of person who's curious and wants to know how to plan for the future. So I have actually had various tests and will continue to monitor myself. I don't want to be practicing if I'm not capable of practicing. Right now I'm very productive and everything's fine. But yes, the opportunities for anyone, whether it's me or anybody who has a family history of Alzheimer's disease, to get baseline cognitive testing, to get clarity about genetic risks, not just that one or two members of the family have or had Alzheimer's disease, but that there are things we can test to get this risk profile for any one individual. And I urge people who are curious to do that.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much. I know I get asked that all the time, and I've decided not to do the test just because I tell myself that I wouldn't go down the rabbit hole, but I'm like, well, you don't know till you're there. And so,
yeah, and nobody should, there's no right or wrong about this. People who want information should be directed to how they can get it rather than being told there's nothing available, which isn't true. That's part of the problem with this field. There are so many myths and misinformation. But people who don't want to know absolutely should be respected for their decisions.
Yep, Yeah, but I think it's good for all of us to be monitoring our cognitive health, no matter what
Yes.
your decision is. So I thank you for sharing that. That is it's nice to hear, and I appreciate your openness there. There's so much going on in the research pipeline. I mean, as an outsider, it's kind of like things are bouncing off the walls out there. You don't know what's working or what's not. And it reminds me of, back in the days when bacon was good, bacon was bad, and it was just kind of ping-pong back and forth.
Red wine, coffee, yeah, we all go through cycles, right?
Exactly.
It's true. It's very hard as a layperson to make sense of the field, but I can tell you that it is, in fact, an exciting time in Alzheimer's research, and there's an increasing investment in Alzheimer's research, which we need. We've always been underfunded and neglected compared with fields like cancer, and therefore we've been slower in having any, breakthroughs, but that will change. There are over 100 different compounds being tested in the clinical trial pipeline and more to come. So before we test things in people, they go through laboratory stages, they go through experimental animals. Sadly, I'm a big animal lover, so I don't like saying that. But once we get to testing in people, there are over 100 compounds right now, very different, one from the other, being tested. So that's not a blank slate there. There are more sensitive tools to catch the disease process earlier, so we don't wait until the brain is too injured. That's also exciting. And these sensitive tools involve things like special scans to detect proteins that can develop even before symptoms of Alzheimer's. We can look at the spinal fluid and see some of these markers. And this holy grail of blood-based biomarkers, being able to do a blood test and tell whether you have or will develop Alzheimer's, that isn't quite a reality yet, but a lot of progress is being made. So people may hear about this in the media or, from scientific conferences, blurbs that this is coming. And it is very exciting, and we might think, it's scary to be able to diagnose so early, but it opens up a huge window of opportunity to prevent the disease, and really that will be the best way to intervene, to catch the disease before it actually damages the brain.
Yeah, well, it's I work with so many people with dementia, and so often, years ago it was, they were too young, and they didn't meet the criteria, and now it's just refreshing and scary at the same time to hear that the disease can start affecting our brain 10 to 15 years prior to symptoms being noticed or recognized in the body, and so it just, I think, makes us all have to pay more attention to what are we doing with our bodies, and how are we feeling, and just be more in tune and open to things, because I would imagine, like with cancer, it can be in our bodies for a long time, not doing anything, but just kind of sitting around,
Yeah, and we don't expect people to stick their heads in the sand and say, it's just a small lump, don't worry about it. We want to catch it when it's small, if it's a lump and it's cancerous. And we need to think the same way about Alzheimer's. A little bit of memory loss, we shouldn't be told, don't worry about it. We should be told, let's check it out. If there's nothing, there's nothing. If there's something more to pursue, let's do that. So I think we are entering an era where there's greater awareness. There's more we can do. We are getting closer to a cure, although I don't have it in my pocket today. I wish I did. But it will come. But we need to stay hopeful, and we need to, as you described, get involved. Find out about things. Look after your brain. Don't, if you're worried about your memory, don't just sit and worry quietly. Do something about it.
Exactly. Now, did you just go to the Alzheimer's Association International Conference this year?
I did go in July. It's one of the biggest international conferences, and another one coming up the end of October, yes.
And because I've just heard a little here and a little there about Ban 2401, and I'm wondering if you can talk about that and what that is all about.
Sure. Ban 2401 is the name of an antibody that binds to a protein in the brain called amyloid. Amyloid is the earliest brain change we can identify in people who develop Alzheimer's disease. And in this phase 2 study, this was a sort of a middle stage study with over 800 people, a reasonable sized study, giving people intravenous infusions of BAN 2401 every 2 weeks allowed amyloid plaque to be completely cleared from the brain on the optimal doses, and people did better. The disease was slowed down. So this is huge. So not only are we seeing plaque coming out of the brain, but we're also seeing the important correlates that people's thinking, behavior is better than if they weren't treated compared with those on placebo. And that's what we need. We need to know that the biomarker or the protein is being removed and that people are doing better. So depending on which measurements used, there was about a 50% slowing, almost 50% slowing down of Alzheimer's disease. That's very encouraging. Now this BAN 2401 will need to go into a phase 3 study where we can confirm these results in a larger group of individuals with Alzheimer's disease, but it's certainly on our radar now to follow what happens with this compound.
Wow, that is very encouraging. One of the questions I'm going to ask, because I've heard of studies where they talk about the amyloid plaque, and then on the other hand they said there's been studies where some people have had symptoms and haven't had any plaque. But do we really know what causes dementia? I mean, there's so many different variables of it as well.
Yeah, it's a good question. So dementia has many causes, and the commonest cause as we get older, so not in young people, but in older people, the commonest cause is Alzheimer's disease. And by definition, Alzheimer's disease requires the presence of amyloid plaque. So amyloid is a necessary change in the brain. In Alzheimer's, there are other changes that happen as well. So people who we think have Alzheimer's disease, they're progressively more forgetful and, maybe 70 years old, and they seem like they have Alzheimer's. If they don't have amyloid plaque in the brain, then it's something else. I'm not saying it's not a dementia of one kind or other, but it's not Alzheimer's disease. And we realize that being able to assess for the amyloid protein is very important, because what we've thought is Alzheimer's disease in the past is not always correct. And if we have a treatment that can lower amyloid and improve how people are doing, we want to use that sensibly. We don't want to give that treatment to people who don't have amyloid, because that doesn't make sense that they would benefit from that.
Okay.
So the field's getting more sophisticated, I guess, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, definitely. Now, there's been so many failures in terms of research and clinical studies that are being done out there. And I know when I talk with people, they get really down, but I'm a firm believer that there is no such thing as failure. It just brings us one step closer to an end result that we're looking for. It's a learning tool. How do you look at the so-called failures?
Yeah, no, it's a very important question. And I think, as a human being, I get discouraged when things don't go the way we wanted. But in clinical trials, each study is designed to answer a specific question. Does this drug at this dose work at this stage of disease? And if a trial is well constructed, the trial won't fail. It will give us a clear answer, yes or no. The compound may fail. We may say, okay, well, that one's not worth continuing with. But the results of the study will allow us to build the next study and the study after that. And eventually only, a small percentage of drugs being tested in any therapeutic area will cross the finish line. In cancer medicine, about 10% of, 100 drugs, 10 will cross the finish line. So we don't expect all of these studies to be successful as far as the compound. But without these failed studies, we wouldn't know where to go next. In Alzheimer's disease, it's been such a complicated disease and the brain's been such a mystery that our success rate's even lower than in cancer. It's more like 1%, and we need these trials to get done and more quickly. But absolutely, there's no way around clinical trials. This is the route to success, and that will come.
Okay, great. Now, I heard you guys recently invited people back to the clinic for a celebration who were part of your Band 2401 trial, and I've not heard of that before. Why did that happen?
It's a new way of doing research. We really wanted to honor people who participate in studies, not just the study participants, but their families. We invited pets and dogs as well. We felt that these people who were courageous and dedicated their time and energy and let us poke them and scan them and test them really deserve some recognition. Not only did they contribute valuable data to what might be a next approved Alzheimer's treatment, Band 2401. We don't know yet, but the trial that they were in was successful and will lead to the Phase 3 Band 2401. But we wanted to really honor their spirit of giving because they participated not just for themselves, but for their families and for others, next generations, for people they don't even know. And this is really what a medical hero is made of. So we held a luncheon for them. We invited them and their families. It was a fantastic event. Our pharmacy coordinator and our director of operations and our investigators, our physicians, we all served them lunch. We're not as good at being servers as we are at being research staff, but we did our best, and it was a lot of fun. And we awarded them and just recognized them individually for their participation. And I think this really was very successful and made us realize we should be doing this a whole lot more often. And it doesn't have to be that a trial has come to fruition or even been successful. Some of these trials are 2-3 years, and maybe annually we should have an event to honor all our research participants. I think it's very important. I don't think they get enough recognition.
I tend to agree with you, and I hear from so many trials out there, they're struggling getting people to be involved. But I think, if you can get to be relationship-based with them and really make them feel a sense of belonging, I think that's missing from our society as a whole. But when it comes to the world of dementia, their worlds can become very, very small. And they're making a huge, huge contribution to pushing things forward and making the world a better place. So I think that's a wonderful tool and technique to help not only lift them and encourage them to continue, but to talk about it with other people. That when you're appreciated, you tell people about that. Your experience, that kindness, and that's much better than it failed. And explaining even if it does fail, we still appreciate you. We still learned. From this experience.
That's right. And letting them know what we learned in lay terms. Rather than them finding out somebody attended a conference and their study was mentioned. And, it's just so impersonal the way people find out results when they themselves contributed the data. So, I couldn't agree with you more. People need to feel valued, and these folks are really doing their part.
Yeah,
really
and
contributing.
I think it goes, when I go out and speak, I talk a lot about the corrective model versus the compassionate model. And, kind of corrective care, this is right, this is wrong. And, it doesn't have to be just right or wrong. There are lessons learned throughout all of life, and we still have to appreciate and value those that we're working with. And I just think I just think it's a brilliant idea, and I'd like to see more of that happening. I think you'll get richer studies. I think you'll get more people involved, and will really help push things forward. And I loved how you called them medical heroes, because they truly are. They truly are.
I
so
agree.
Kudos to you guys. Now you guys are seeing more and more people being interested in clinical trials that, will hopefully prevent Alzheimer's. And one of these studies is just a cheek swab. Can you tell people about that one?
Sure. Well, first of all, we are blown away by the interest of healthy individuals to learn whether they may be at risk for Alzheimer's disease, and if they are, their willingness to participate in a prevention study. So maybe mom or dad has had Alzheimer's, or they've had some minor forgetfulness themselves, but they're basically cognitively healthy individuals, no diagnosis of dementia or, substantial memory impairment. And yet they are willing to come forward and say, can I be part of the solution for this disease? So with a simple cheek swab, a painless, non-invasive test, it's sort of like a Q-tip, and you brush the inside of the cheek, we collect DNA that we take back to the clinic, run through a machine, and we can analyze for a risk factor gene for Alzheimer's disease. And then we contact people who have this risk factor gene and invite them to come in, learn their results, and participate in a study. And because this particular risk factor gene is called ApoE, and the type is ApoE4, occurs in only about 2% of the population as 2 copies of E4, and as 1 copy of E4, which is also a risk but not as high a risk, in about 25% of the population. We go into the community. We ask people to be part of the solution. They come forward. We've had hundreds of people now come line up for a cheek swab, and it turns into sort of a cheek swab party. And I don't say this to be frivolous. It's really an enjoyable. Everybody meets everybody. They line up. They have their cheeks swabbed. These could be community events where people didn't know each other to start with, and it's really a different way of approaching Alzheimer's disease, where it's not just our frail seniors who are already very disabled by the disease who are asking to give more. We're saying, healthy people, you can now do something to help move the field forward.
Well, and, I can see where that would be a positive, fun experience, because, you're being proactive, and then just seeing other people being proactive. I mean, it just kind of ignites a synergy and a passion that, we can make a difference. So that whole power of one, I think, has gotten people forget how important they are in our world, and their choices matter. And so I think that's great. I think that's absolutely wonderful. Now, you're located in Toronto. Is that available in the U.S. at all?
It is. Yeah, so having a cheek swab done is something that can be done at an Alzheimer's clinic, clinics that run clinical trials. So usually these are memory clinics or Alzheimer's research centers. But again, we're talking here about prevention, so people can have a cheek swab even if they don't have memory problems, even if they're not actually needing the services of a memory clinic, but they want to come forward and participate in prevention research. So yes, there are many centers across the United States who would offer this, and the actual research project with the intervention for people who have this high-risk gene is run in partnership with the Banner Institute. So they're in Arizona, and the NIH, and Novartis and Amgen. So it's really a public-private collaboration and an international study, U.S., Canada, and other countries as well.
Wonderful. Now, is that a cost that's covered by insurance, or as part of the trial, or is that an out-of-pocket expense to people to get involved
Great
with that?
Great question. It is covered by the research grant, so there's no cost to participants. So cost is not a barrier. But, how would people know? So I'm glad you're asking me, and I can let people know. This is free and painless, and if people are willing to do this, hats off to you. Again, we don't twist anybody's arm. People need to want to do it. But I think that there are so many people who would want to do something if they knew there was something they could do. And so providing the opportunity is really what we've done in Toronto. And we, as I said before, we were just blown away at how many people would line up. The first event we went to, we didn't bring enough swabs. We were sending people away because after 100 people, we had run out. So we learned.
Gosh, I'm just thinking about it. I do. I go around the country and speak here, and one of the things that I also do is a movie screening of His Neighbor Phil, which is all about the caring experience that families go through. And I just think, Oh, that would just like be a perfect time to almost set up a little station because you've got all these families that are pulling together, watching this experience, and then it would give them an option to be able to find out something like that and be able to participate. Because I do think a lot of times people don't know how to reach out or how to find these things, or are they even available? And many, if they haven't had disease in their family, they don't even know what a clinical trial is because they haven't needed to know.
That's so true, and I love the education you're providing through your show because even though the science is moving forward, the opportunities are greater than they ever were. If people don't know, then how do we make that bridge? So yeah, we need to get the word out, and a lot of positive messages that are very worthwhile that people can easily relate to. We say to people, do this for mom or dad, do it for your kids, and that resonates. Nobody wants their children to have to struggle with Alzheimer's. They'll have enough problems to deal with in the world, and we don't need that disease around.
Exactly. Now, one of the things that seems to be, and, I'm a novice at all of this, so bear with me, but it seems like there's more research being shared between basically opponents, in competition in terms of lessons learned. Is that true?
That is very true. There's something called the pre-competitive space. It's sort of a fancy word for let's share information, let's work together. Yes, of course, you want to have the winning compound or I want to have it. But if we don't learn from each other, we're going to repeat each other's mistakes. We're going to learn the hard way. It's going to take a lot longer for anyone to have a breakthrough. And so there is a lot more sharing amongst pharmaceutical companies and biotech, but not just that. There's a lot of partnering between public and private organizations, charitable organizations, foundations, academia, and industry. So we need to go that way. Just the way in your intro to the show you talked about the collaborative approach really being so important, and hats off to so many people who are doing their piece in the field. And now in the research space, we need this collaboration also to be full force.
Well, yeah, and the cost alone, I would think that would help keep that down because the cost to push any drug trial forward is just astronomical. And I don't think people understand necessarily the process you guys have to go through and the cost to bear with that. And when our
technology that can benefit several trials, a technology that could be shared could, prevent one group of trialists from having to reinvent a similar thing. So, if there's a cognitive test that's particularly sensitive or a blood test in the future that's going to be the best way to diagnose, why should these be kept in silos? We all need to benefit from these things.
Yeah, great. Now, what do you think is next, for Alzheimer's disease? Are we likely to see more detection and prevention trials coming out? In the news, you kind of sometimes hear this doom and gloom, and you almost feel like, they're all going to stop because they're not making the headway they want, and they're, not. So, what do you see for trials?
I don't see trials slowing down. I think we will continue to see more prevention studies, so studies going very early in the disease process or even before disease sets in healthy populations. But we can't abandon the people who have disease and are needing care. So even if we had a prevention approved tomorrow and could stop new cases of Alzheimer's, we still have 50 million people in the world with the disease and families looking after them who need treatment and care. So we're still going to need to treat symptoms. So prevention, medicines that will slow down the disease or arrest it once it gets started, and treatments that intervene with symptoms, so prevent people from being agitated, depressed, improve memory, whatever symptoms we're targeting, those are all going to be necessary. Unfortunately, there are studies looking at that full spectrum of Alzheimer's, from before the disease to the late stage of disease. We don't want to abandon people who, just because they are now severe, and we're thinking early prevention, we don't want to abandon these folks and say there's nothing for them. So part of my job as an Alzheimer's clinical trialist is to remind people in the drug development business that there are people with substantial symptoms who still need treatment. And that quality of life, even for somebody who has late-stage Alzheimer's, quality of life can be poor or it can be good. And family support can be poor or it can be good. And we need to attend to all of these facets.
Yeah, I agree. And you're hearing a lot more conversation about cure versus care, and I think there has to be a balance, with all of those. And I've been glad to see, some of the studies taking in some things that, social engagement and music and different things that might not be necessarily pharma related. There seems to be a little bit more. I don't want to say necessarily balance coming in, but different alternatives as well with that can help reduce symptoms in the meantime while we're still working on trying to find a cure. And I think, anyways, from my engagement when I talk with people around the world, that is much appreciated, that it's kind of a holistic, we're looking at all the angles or trying to include all of the angles these days. In terms of dealing with symptoms.
So important. Lifestyle strategies, all of that. I completely agree. There isn't, and even in terms of the medicines, it may be in the end we need a cocktail of medicines. That's not going to be one treatment, but, similar to how we deal with high blood pressure or cancer, there's often 2 or 3 medicines combined that actually have a substantial impact. And then, of course, the non-pharmacologic approaches are so important. So I totally agree with you.
Yeah. Well, and it's hard, too, with stuff like that because, we finally have people making the statement and I think believing when they've met one person with dementia, they've met one, which, basically just states everybody's an individual. Everyone's going to respond a little bit differently. Everyone's got their own kind of magical, health profile that changes, as life changes and stuff. And so there's just so many elements in terms of trying to get this right. And I'm seeing, around the world more of a toolbox approach versus a one way or the highway approach with trying to deal with both symptoms and cure along the way, which I think is really healthy because not only is it just one person with dementia, but then we've got one care partner. They're all individuals, and then our environments change. So, I mean, it's a moving target, all the time. And I think I like the idea personally of being fluid and being open to, looking at things with new eyes and in new ways and the creativity. I mean, I hear of some of the studies and I'm just like, how did they even think to go there? I mean, it's just like, wow. But I think that's great. I think that's what's needed to move forward. Is there anything that we've missed that you would like to tell us about regarding the trials at all?
I think you've done a great job of asking, broad questions, and we've covered a lot. I would, again, encourage people, if they're interested in finding out about clinical trials, that they approach either their, local Alzheimer's Association chapter or a local memory clinic. Our family physicians, our colleagues in family medicine, sadly, don't necessarily know about what's going on in the field, and that's not to minimize them in any way. It's a very specialized area, and we haven't done as good a job as we need to in the future to reach out to people and provide them, the actual way to contact research centers when it comes to memory problems or Alzheimer's prevention. So I think we need to work on that in the future. But meanwhile, as I've said before, anybody who's concerned about their memory or who wants to be part of this movement towards prevention should contact their local memory clinic or just look up, Alzheimer's clinical trials and see what's local in their area, because there are a lot of clinical trial centers in the U.S. and around the world, and let's keep them busy. Let's move the field forward.
Well, I don't know if you've heard, but there is a new resource directory specific to dementia that's just being beta tested right now. It's called Care to Plan. And if people want to go to my website, Alzheimer Speaks, and then just click on the resource directory link, you can click on the graphic and it'll bring you to the beta test for this. Or if you're a company or have some type of resource, if it's trials or a community or educational information or whatever, you can also become a member, which is very economical. It's like $99 for the year. And there's no fee, of course, when they're in beta testing. But it links people directly to you, so there's no middleman. It's really easy to find. They're just in the process of defining and refining subcategories and geo searches, but people will be able to share these files, and then anyone who is a member who has a card in this directory, which Mayo and NIH and CDC are some of the content builders in it, you actually can have a portal then for your website for that $99 a year, which is just absolutely incredible. And this is wonderful. This is something that I think would be really helpful for the trials to get on, because people sometimes go to the trial sites and they can just get a little overwhelmed. And if you can personalize yours, and I think it just would make it a little bit easier for the general public to know. But I have not seen a real thorough dementia specific resource before, so it's something I've wanted since when my mom had dementia, which was 35 years ago, to help guide me, because people just don't get all that information. One question I would like to ask you, though, if you don't mind, is can you tell people a little bit about, since we've got some time, a little bit about the Toronto Memory Program? Would you mind sharing what all you do there?
Sure, not at all. So we are a community-based. That means not within a hospital and not within a university setting. We're a community-based memory clinic and research center, and we are devoted entirely to Alzheimer's disease and related cognitive problems. We are composed of about 30 staff. We have about 8 physicians and research staff, clinic staff. We have a memory clinic where we diagnose and treat people and link people to resources, people who have memory problems, Alzheimer's disease, or other reasons for dementia. And we have our clinical trials program, where we run at any given time between 15 and 20 different clinical trials. These are treatment studies. These are studies that are part of an international program of trials. So the studies run here are often run also at other centers around the world. And we've been doing this for over 25 years. We are Canada's largest Alzheimer's clinical trial center, and we have the most active memory clinic as well. So over 1,500 individuals each year are diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease in our clinic. We're trying to reach out to as many people to help with early diagnosis and treatment opportunities, rather than let people kind of smolder and go without medical care, end up in crisis, in emergency rooms and things that are so tragic and unnecessary with this disease. So that's a little bit about us. We're a very dedicated group of individuals, and most of my staff are about half of my age, and I'm just thrilled at how these young folks who work with me really get it, that this is an important disease, and respect, dignity, and perseverance is the way we're going to manage and move the field forward.
Wonderful. Well, I so appreciate your time with us today. I've just found this to be a really interesting conversation, and even when you just mentioned about your clinical trials are hooked up with others around the world. So I think a lot of times our audience and the general public doesn't know. They think that all these trials are little isolated bits and pieces, and yet again, it just shows how you're working together to, gather information and research to move the cause forward, which is fantastic. So I thank you so much. Now, if people want to get in touch with you, they can go to your website, which is the TorontoMemoryProgram.com. And then I also have a phone number, which is 416-386-9761. That's 416-386-9761. Is there any other information that you wanted to give out?
That's perfect. Yeah, we welcome people, traffic through our website or phone calls, and you can speak to someone directly. We're very eager to help people, and if we don't have what someone's looking for, or if the geography is not ideal, we'll find a place to link you to. So we're very interested in helping people get answers. Thank you so much for letting people know about us.
Well, again, appreciate your time and all you're doing, and I love those celebrations that you're doing. I really think
yes,
we'll
do more of those. We'll do more of those. That was really good.
Yeah, I love when there's a positive piece of cohesion, pulling everybody together who's worked together, and I think in this fast-paced world, we don't always stop to appreciate that, and I think that's such a value add. And so kudos to you guys for doing that. So thank you again so much, Dr. Cohen. It was just a great conversation, and it was a hopeful one with all the different angles that you talked about, and I think our audience will really appreciate it. In wrapping up, I just want to give a shout out to Calendar Cards, which is a memory system that helps people manage their lives independently. And one of the things that I just adore about Calendar Cards is that they have also put together a Memory Cafe directory. It was just for the U.S., but now they've expanded into other countries because they've just done such a great job with it. And so you can go to memorycafedirectory.com to see if there's a Memory Cafe in your area, or if you want to register your cafe free, Dave would be more than glad to do that. And when you go there, you'll be able to access the calendar cards. And just for your knowledge, calendar and cards are both spelled with a K. And last, I want to give a call out to Purple Table Reservations. They are just a unique app, and they are out there soliciting restaurants to come on board and train their staff and serve their clientele that have dementia, or maybe they have post-traumatic stress, maybe they're dealing with autism. So much of the needs overlap, and so they will train you on how to train your staff to serve them better. If it's making a modified menu, where to seat somebody so it's not as noisy and better light, and how to read body language, all of those types of things. So you can check out purpletables.com for further information. In the meantime, all have a blessed week, and again, always feel free to like, click, and share. We appreciate you as our audience. Bye now.
Hi, this is Suzanne Newman, host of the Answers for Elders podcast and radio show. We are the North Star that guides you through the complicated journey of senior care with trusted experts in money, law, living solutions, and more. So join us on this station, your favorite podcast channel, or just go to AnswersForElders.com. Meet the Wayshowers who will help your journey go a lot easier.